Okay, welcome everyone to the May 3rd, 2022 Planning Board of the Village of Rhinebeck. The first item on the agenda is a public hearing for 6415-6417 Montgomery Street, special use permit and site plan for a proposed restaurant in the Star Building. So do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
We have a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor, Suzanne,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and David, aye. Okay, the public hearing is opened. Why don't we have Christina's here. Why don't we have her explain to the public what you want to do in that space?
Great. Thank you. Do you want me to share screen, or Ryan, would you like to share the site plan?
You can certainly share screen.
Okay. So we'll start with this page. This is the site plan of the building, the existing building and the parking lot in the rear. We made some revisions from last meeting. We added a concrete sidewalk along the rear of the property line. We added some landscaping back there, which the board requested. We also, based on the conversation, took another look at parking and came up with what I think are more accurate depiction of the total use of the building. So we have the calculations here. We have 100 Mile, the second floor tenant taking up 2 spaces, the real estate office taking up 2 spaces, the restaurant exterior, which we reduced to 40 seats. That was a little higher previously, 5 spaces. I think that's supposed to read as interior is 38 seats, 5 spaces, and then the future basement use, which is not part of this application when we would return to the board for, but just in terms of, planning and disclosure, if that was, an office or something like that, that would be 2 spaces for that. So that's the parking calculations. And then this is the site plan. And essentially we're talking about this part of the building here, which is the proposed restaurant. And this plan shows the seating, that outdoor dining that takes place on the front of the building and part of the side of the building in this area. Any questions?
Yeah, well, so you said 5 spots. The outside is, I counted as 40 seats, which is 5 spots. The inside is a black hole. What's happening inside the restaurant?
We did that calculation, I believe, based on square footage, and I don't have that, but I could provide that for the board.
Well, the inside, for a restaurant, the inside, we should see in a site plan, the seating arrangements. And the code for the inside is 1 space for every 4 indoor seats. Outside is 1 space for every 8 indoor seats. I believe you said you had restaurant seating for 38. Did you say that?
Let's see what is on here. We've got 38. We have 38 and 40. If you just give me 1 second, I want to double check our calculation. We previously showed you. Got it. Okay, so I think there's actually an error on our calculations. Interior is 20 seats for 5 spaces, which would be the 4 that you noted, and the exterior 48 seats. This is what we previously showed you last month, and the intention was that we were gonna add in the basement into the total calculations of the building, just so we could plan for the future use of that, and that's what we're looking at here. So the interior would stay at the 20 seats.
The outside is 20 tables, which is 40 seats, which is 5 seats outside and 5 seats inside. Is that what you're saying is your calculation?
That's what we're saying. Yes. So that's 5 spaces for the inside, 5 spaces for the outside, a total of 10 for the restaurant.
All right. Before we go further, I want to ask, is there any member of the public that's watching the meeting who would like to ask any questions? Ryan, can you see the screen, or if anybody's raising their hand?
I don't see any hands being raised. I have received no messages
Okay.
over the chat, so
All right, then we can
it's
to the board. Suzanne, Jeff, Michael, John, you have any questions?
On the previous plans, there was a walnut tree just to the west of the dumpster area. And I don't see it here on this plan as it being removed, which in my mind would be desirable, but if it is, it should be indicated, existing walnut to be removed.
It is not intended to be removed. We can definitely add it graphically to this plan. Yeah, it's located somewhere over in this.
It's right on the edge of the dumpster.
Yeah.
And my concern is having 2 walnut trees in my yard, they're basically dropping baseballs on people's windshields in October and November every year. From a
Definitely.
liability point,
Yes.
smart.
Yes, they do. They do. I mean, we can take a look at that. But at this time, there was no plan to remove it.
All right, well, that's be your liability, I guess. Anybody, Michael, anything else? Jeff, Suzanne?
I have a question. The 40 outdoor seats, are those gonna just be seasonal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no proposed structure outside. So there's the existing porch along Montgomery Street, and then along the side, we're just proposing a small expansion of the existing concrete sidewalk to accommodate the tables on that side. So looks something like this.
so we
I'm sorry. I was just
we
gonna
have.
ask.
Go ahead, Suzanne.
Sorry, is there a bar inside? It's very hard for me to read this. It's really impossible, actually. So,
So this plan does not show any detail on the interior of the restaurant. We have dimensions. That's what these 2 lines are, which I can zoom in on that a little bit. Here's the interior of the restaurant. And we based the parking calculation on square footage because the design of the interior has not yet been determined, but it will be
Based on chairs.
contained within this space.
It's
Sorry,
based
David?
on chairs. That's why inside it's 4 for 1 spot. Outside, because it's seasonal, it's 8 for 1 spot. So you can have 20 chairs in there. It's not based on square footage for restaurants. So you could have 20 chairs. It would be, at least you should put 20 chairs on the plan to be decided. And we have to have the zoning enforcement officer check that out when the restaurant's finally approved for opening.
Sure.
So I have a question, Chair, from an attendee. Keith Reichelt has asked for what type of restaurant it's going to be. Does the representing agent have any idea of what type of restaurant it's going to be?
It is, I don't have the details on the type of food. I think it's going to be, something like small plates, light food. and drinks.
Hopefully that satisfies Mr. Reicheld's question.
Any more comments from the board?
I would just like to point out, I like the fact that at John Clark's suggestion, they're putting in a sidewalk to connect the other side of Garden Street. But just for the applicant's knowledge, about year and a half, 2 years ago, the village Public Works Department was at the back entrance to that building, and John Fenton indicated to me, I said, "What's going on?" He says, "There's all kinds of problems with water drainage under there, and we don't know. We don't have accurate maps." And they paved it, which is desirable. But right as you're pulling in there, you can see very slight depressions just beginning. So I'm not sure if that's an indication of something going on underneath the ground. But the applicant should be aware of, we're an old village and we don't have accurate maps of what was built 100, 200 years ago. And, I just noticed, since I live almost next to it, it's like there's it's slight depression, and it's only about 1 square foot, but it wasn't there when they first paved. So I don't know if something's going on, but please be aware of it.
Yeah, that's good to know. And on that point, I will also add with drainage. I spoke to the neighbor, Piper Wood, today, and her building is downhill from this building, and we're sensitive to that. There's potential for runoff in her direction. So we're going to make sure when we add the piece of sidewalk up in the front that, we do a little curtain drain right along her fence, just to make sure that additional paved area doesn't affect her.
Anybody have any other questions or comments about this?
I have a couple. There's no dimensions on this site plan for the parking area. And I went out there today and I counted different spaces than you have it laid out. Comes to the same total, but I had 5 spaces on the north side, 4 on the east, including the handicap, and 8 spaces on the south. And it's a big field of asphalt, much more asphalt than you would need for 17 spaces, but because of the squarish configuration, there's no better way to lay it out and get the maximum number of spaces. So you end up with a big centerpiece of asphalt.
Yeah.
So I would like to suggest 2 things. One is that, maybe 3. One is you extend the planting strips a little further out so you narrow the throat of the driveway. So, you really only need 20 feet or 24 feet at the most in the middle there for cars to get in and out. And that way it would help screen more of the lot. If you're going to put plantings in, you might as well do a better job of screening that field of asphalt. So if you could extend it another plant on the north and south side so that it closes up that throat a little bit, that would be helpful. I'd like a dimension on the sidewalk of 5 feet, so we know we get sort of a minimum sidewalk there. It's 6 feet on the Montgomery Road too, and it tapers down to probably about 4 feet at the property line on the south. So if you could do 4 feet on the south and 6 feet and sort of make it 5 feet in on average.
Okay.
So the dumpster is longer than what's shown on this plan, at least by my eyeball, because there's only 5 spaces on the north side. Number 12 has the tree at the end, but because there's so much room to back out, you can still park in front of the tree. But the dumpster takes up space number 13, but you do get an extra one on the south side, so it all evens out. And, the tables are confusing. We had 2 different tables that say 2 different things. I would like the final site plan to say 20 seats, 5 spaces. Because if it's 40 seats, it's 10 spaces are required, and that puts you over the limit.
Great. Yep, we can definitely make those changes.
Good. But I thank you for putting in the sidewalk and the planting. That would be a big improvement. Having that lot paved, planted along the edge with a sidewalk that gets people most of the way down Garden Street on a sidewalk on that side.
Okay, any more comments from the board or the public?
Yes, I agree with John. If this is the proposed site plan, in addition to putting the dimensions on, if you could correct the parking calculation list. For example, I see restaurant EXT 40 seats, restaurant exterior 38 seats. I think what you said earlier was the restaurant EXT 40 seats would be 5. And the other one should say restaurant interior. And I think what you said, it would be 20 seats, not 38 seats. Is
That's
that correct?
correct.
Okay, so if you could correct that, 20 seats. My question, I don't know whether Ryan, you know, or John, do bar stools count as seats in a restaurant like this?
I don't know, David, what have we done in the past?
I think we've counted them.
I believe
Yeah.
you've counted them.
I would think so,
believe
because
you count.
oftentimes people eat at the bar and
right.
it is seating. We don't have, in other cases, we've had a site plan which showed at least the initial proposed layout of the restaurant and the bar. It would be nice to have that. And you should consider that when you correct this, 20 seats is not going to go far on the interior. It's not many, especially if you're going to have a bar. Finally, the last line item that says future basement use, what does that say? 3,000 square feet?
Yeah, we were trying to sort of throttle our parking and account for something for the basement. And that's not part of this application. So, I mean, obviously we'd be coming back with those details for the board to review. But, we thought based on the last discussion, it made sense to, to kind of look at the parking that we have and, understanding, that the theater is grandfathered in, look at the rest of the building and then allocate appropriately to include some kind of potential use for the basement.
Well, if
Yeah,
you
I guess the thing that's confusing about that is if it was, for instance, retail space, 3,000 square feet would amount to, as I read it, 6 spaces.
Sure. So, I mean, we can definitely take that line off if it's not helpful, but, the intention was just to, communicate that we're thinking about, the building as a whole and what potential use that basement could have.
Well, you could, if you had 2 spots allocated, you could go to 4 by paying 2 parking in lieu of fees. But that would be it, 2 and 2. I know the basement goes under the entire building, under the real estate office and the restaurant. It's a huge space. But that's the future.
Yep.
Yeah, my point here was if we keep the line in, my concern is if we approve this and somebody would come and you end up using 3,000 square feet of the basement, somebody could come back and say, well, you guys approved it. You said you only needed 2 spaces for 3,000 square feet of rental retail space. So
That's fair.
I would suggest you either say future basement use no more than 500 square feet, which would be 2 spaces, or not.
To be determined, yeah.
Or
Yeah,
do you
to
want
be-
to, or should we just take it off and not even put that and just show that we have 2 spaces that are not being used currently?
That I'd be happy with that too. I'm suspecting that when you get to laying out the interior of that restaurant, 20 chairs is not going to go far, especially with a bar. But if you can correct this calculation and dimension the drawings as John asked.
One more point. I'm sorry to bother you again on this one, but that parking lot screening, you have fountain grass and another type of grass in there as the only screening element, and grass really doesn't do it as a screen. I mean, I know it's 2 feet tall, sort of wispy grass in clumps, but it's not a real good screening element, especially in the winter. Gets packed down by the snow and I think we'd be better off with, some sort of greenery shrub, evergreen shrub. Junipers or, boxwoods or some combination of something that lasts through the winter and can create a bit of a hedge there.
Sure. We can swap that out.
Good.
Okay, the first thing we need is a motion to close the public hearing. Someone make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right. Michael Gee and Suzanne seconds it. All those in favor, roll call vote. Suzanne,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
and David, aye. Okay, now we need a motion to approve the special use permit and site plan for the restaurant at 6415-6417 Montgomery Street.
I don't think we're ready for this. I would like to see a corrected site plan before we vote on it, both in the parking calculations and the layout of the parking lot and landscaping.
Yeah, I agree with John. Until everything is finalized, I think we can hold off.
I'd be ready in 2 weeks. If you're ready, I think we could be ready. I think the basics are agreed upon, but I would like to see it before I vote on it.
All right, if we're going to wait the 2 weeks, then can you see if you can figure out something that shows 20 seats or some rough shape of what this restaurant might look like?
I think
Sure.
that would be a good idea, yeah.
We can definitely provide a little more information there.
Okay, then we're going to hold this over to May 17. Okay, and continue this later, but the public hearing is closed. Okay,
Sounds good.
all right, thank you. The
Thank
second
you.
item, Gigi's, we're going to hold over till May 17th as well. We are consulting our attorney to clarify the parking, grandfathering, parking in lieu of fee. It's a very long discussion about parking. So we're going to hold that over until May 17th. Okay, so that takes us to the third item on the agenda, which is Keith Reichelt, The Krog, 41 East Market Street, suite number 4. All right, are they, Keith here?
Yep, I'm on. Good evening.
Okay. So, we have a letter from Justin. Did everyone read the letter that Justin sent out?
Yes.
Where he says that he met with Joe Kurthois, the owner. He discussed everything in the outdoor dining, and he, according to the need for 2 spaces, he is he's recommending that we allow a $2,000 2 parking in lieu of fee spots to allow the new design, which is 4 tables and chairs in the first 2 spots.
Just clear, if you could show the picture, Ryan, it's actually just the one spot. It was recommended that we go backwards a little bit on the number. So we did. So there's a new drawing that we had our engineer do.
That's only taking 1 spot?
Correct. Yeah, correct. Taking 1 spot in terms of what was in front of the building. If you recall, the last 2 weeks ago, we started with 1, went to 2, and back to 1 based on Justin and Ryan's recommendation. So you'll see it in a minute if you don't have it on your desks. But there you go. Because of and a couple of things. So because of the number of parking spaces, we're taking 2 away. It was recommended by Justin to just propose 1 taken away, and then it limits the number of seats for the overall site plan. And part B is similar to what we just talked about, the seats will be considered seasonal and not a permanent site plan adjustment. So we would, consider a season, when it's not freezing cold out. So probably something like April-ish to, December-ish.
So comments from the board.
There's been a tremendous amount of paperwork and information that's going all over the place in the last few months on this. One of the things that I remember seeing was barriers drawn by an engineer, but there's no specifics on it. There's no stamped engineer's plan. I want it to be very specific because safety is is the top of the list. When you're in a parking lot, we want something that somebody's not gonna crash in and kill or hurt somebody. So I want real defined specifics from an engineer or a safety official, before I would
Also,
go on to
if you
this.
look at the bottom, so we have some photos of the ideas of the planter from last time, and then you can see there's dimensions of what the sizes are. I don't think a stamp from an engineer, this is done by a professional engineer, is going to prevent safety. That's just liability for an engineer if someone gets hit, but this is done by a professional PE. So, and it shows traffic flow, which is what we were asked to show, sizing. I think we talked about the safety last time. There's, we've got curbs that are safety now in Rhinebeck. I don't understand if we put up barriers like we showed for the last month and a half, which I thought were okay last time. Is where we left off was just the seating was the only issue, if I recall, that you guys were waiting on, and we've sorted that out. So I don't know if Ryan has the photos of those barriers, but they're 1 foot wide by 8 foot long with gravel and dirt and mulch and flour. So they'll be super heavy. And then, the big barrels will be in between them as a spacer for, just looks.
Yeah, if I can just kind of jump in and maybe, because I had 2 issues last time that I stated. One was the fact that this is removing parking, which I think is a problem. And the second is that this would establish a precedent to allow to start a 1 by 1 by 1 by 1 series of requests from individual tenants to do what amounts to sidewalk outdoor dining, which is the responsibility of the trustees and the mayor. I have to say this, I agree with Michael. There was a ton of documents that came out. I didn't see a summary or I didn't understand a summary that said how many spaces were devoted to each tenant and or building, etc. But it sounds to me like there's a proposal to do a in lieu of option to remove parking. Is that correct?
Well, correct.
Okay. I'm opposed to that. I don't think that that's the intention of the in lieu of option. This would be tantamount to purchasing a parking space with an in lieu of fee. And that's not what the in lieu of fees are for. The in lieu of fees are we run out of parking space. There aren't any more existing parking spaces. And we're deciding whether we can accept up to a certain amount in lieu of fee. What's being asked for here is basically to buy a parking space and take it out of service. Right?
If I could interrupt, it's actually a private parking spot too. It's not really for, Joe could, rope that off right now if he wanted to, I think, but.
Okay, let me interrupt. That part I don't understand. That part I don't understand. So you're saying.
Is my speaker on,
There you go, I can hear you.
gentlemen?
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to say also what was discussed with Justin and Ryan is that
Sorry, who's speaking right now? It looks
yes,
like
can
iPhone.
you hear me?
Okay, it's Joe. All right, thank you, Joe.
Yeah. I'm sorry. We also had said that we have 11, or I'm sorry, 13 parking spaces. Now, in the back, on the most north part of the property, we fee simple own a space that was determined for 9 parking spaces. And what we did, we worked with members like you and also John Clark, because he was there at that time in '82. And we permitted to give up our 9 parking spaces in order to be a proper neighbor with the bank and the village trust or village planning members, that they would allow, if you could not find a parking space in the bank parking lot, you would not have to go out and clog up 308 or Market Street. You could drive through the Rhinebeck Wine and Liquor Store property that is going to be no longer parking and go to the annex, which, John, I apologize. I did not realize that the village bought that annex from Mr. Shad, and then go from the annex out to the municipal parking lot, which the merchants purchased and gave it to the village. So that parking space that Keith is speaking of is one space that needs to save a restaurant that was out of revenue for 2 years because of the pandemic. So we appreciate that the Jersey barriers were installed through the state and the local mayor. But that stuff will take many, many years to actually have a makeup. These guys would probably, instead of working their 50-hour weeks, they probably would have to work 70-hour weeks for at least 10 years to make that up. So in order to give up a space to save the actual businesses that are the main core of generating revenue for tax revenue, we have to work with the spaces in order to have our tax revenue be able to go up as well. So since we don't have parking, which is also similar to volume, if we can't increase our volume, how are we only going to make up the differences to raise our prices on our products? And it's hard enough for people right now to be surviving. And if we can't have our restaurants generate revenue, I don't have the answer, because we can't have parking, obviously, because I've been around since John Clark. We haven't put in any space, except I don't know what the annex holds, probably about, I'd say 19 spaces or 18 spaces that we added since 1980, and this whole process has begun. I paid over $43,000 in school taxes year before last. I don't mind paying $53,000, but I definitely need more volume, and volume means parking. And I appreciate that every board member here is trying to do what they're doing, but we definitely can't complain about losing one parking space that will help 2 or 3 businesses in the area be able to generate more revenue. So when they do their triple net 30, that they won't have to fail and go out of business. So
My
Okay.
opinion, Joe, is that Justin has worked out a compromise to drop
Yes.
down to 4 tables, to drop down to losing 1 spot. He is
Correct.
recommending that we do this. He feels that the barriers are safe enough. People are not generally backing up at warp speed. And my feeling, I know there's some concern with our board members, I'm only 1 vote, but my feeling is that this was a good compromise that Justin worked out.
Mhm.
And I don't think that, one spot is going to destroy the village. And this is a very rare occurrence, in the parking lot. I don't think it's setting an outlandish precedent here. But
Right.
like I said, that's just my feeling on the subject.
I really appreciate that.
Yep, thank you.
Do we have other comments from the board?
I have a question. I was reading the historical documents that Ryan sent over. So in the 2019 site plan that was approved for Krog, it said that there were 9 to 12 seats inside and no seats at the bar. But then in the application on April 5th of this year, Keith did show the inside layout diagram, and I counted 22 seats, including 2 seats at the bar. So I was just wondering, I haven't been on the board for more than a year, but maybe there was some amendment that I'm not aware of. I just don't understand how there could be 22 seats inside when the site plan in 2019 provided for 9 to 12.
I actually don't know what document, what sheet chart that is, but we have tables for 12, and then we've got,
That's the
Yeah,
one I'm
so-
talking about.
yeah, so in the middle, we don't have chairs there, but we can, in that middle long table 8.
Oh,
It's actually,
where
yeah,
it
it's actually a
says-
stand up. Yeah, it's like
Where it says 8 chairs, there's not 8 chairs?
no, it's actually like a stand up section.
Every time I go in there, there's chairs there. I sit at that section.
It's confusing for you to say bar, 2 chairs, table, 8 chairs, and now you're saying that there are. I haven't been in there, but
Yeah.
very.
And I mean, I've seen sometimes like a few people might grab an extra stool because we had extra stools from outdoor seating last year that was approved. And maybe they're sitting there, but most folks actually stand, and usually nobody's near the bar tap area. But I can double check that.
Yeah, last time I I actually like this place, and I'm sorry to say what I'm saying about establishing a precedent for outdoor dining on sidewalks, which I'm concerned about.
It's not on the sidewalk,
We
Jeff.
know that there's and it's unfortunate because it's going to take a little bit of time. It's probably going to take a year, but there's a comprehensive plan review, and one of the subcommittees is working on the business district and the parking issues. And I would hope, for example, that one of the things that comes out of that is a revisitation of the whole parking allocation process. It's kind of chock-a-block now. I think it started out pretty well, and I understand why there is in lieu of stuff. But for example, having a one-time in lieu of fee in retrospect and given the experience we had, I don't think a one-time fee makes any sense whatsoever, because tenants come in and go out. And there needs to be a way to manage the database of the allocated parking spaces down to the tenant level, because the tenant level is what's either a retailer, restaurant, et cetera. So I don't think this is going to cause a business to fail. I don't agree with that theory. I hope that the comprehensive plan is also, unless the mayor and trustees come out with a resolution before that on outdoor dining, it'll come out of the comprehensive plan effort. It's probably going to take a year, but I think that's correctly where all of this stuff belongs, because once again, my fear is that if we approve this, then we have no leg to stand on to the next, when the pizza parlor comes to us and says, I want to put seats on the sidewalk. That's just my.
And Jeff, let me just clarify. This is not on the sidewalk.
Yeah,
There's a 5.5 foot sidewalk that is wide open.
Yeah, you're removing a parking space to put outdoor dining. Right.
In a parking space, not in a,
Well,
sidewalk.
here's the other thing. If you're going to do this, I suggest there should be a curb, and you should pave it and raise it like a patio instead of people standing on macadam.
well, Jeff,
But,
actually,
you know.
I
So
suggested
anyway,
that.
I don't want to belabor the issue.
No, that's okay.
Others
I
may have
suggested
their
that a month
opinion.
ago,
I just wanted to clarify my position on this, and I don't want to belabor it and go on any longer and take other people's time. So, Suzanne and Michael and John can have an opinion, and David.
Can I interject in just a moment, please? Please, Jeff. Your theory is magnificent. I'm not Fury. I've been working in the village since 1979, only 43 years. And I think and respect John Clark more than anybody because of the business he's in. Speaking about business, I ran at least 1 to 2 businesses in that village for 43 years. Okay. As a matter of fact, I'm still running 2 businesses. All right. So for you to say that Fury is not to fail of just because we're losing 1 parking space, I don't understand how you could actually speak about something like that, because I've never seen you run a business in Rhinebeck in the last 43 years that I've been here. Now, if we want to talk about a parking problem, I've been talking to the mayor, and I wish I could talk to somebody where they would say, we don't have a parking problem, we have a walking problem. I said, well, I stand to tell you that there is a problem because the police, when I was in the village in the 79 to about 85, 86, marked the bottom of the tires. And the mayor said, well, guess what? That's destruction of property. We can't do that. So I can't even comprehend if you took a piece of chalk and marked the tread, not the sidewall, the bottom of the tire, and came back 2 hours later and wrote a ticket that you couldn't get rid of half of the employees that are parking in the places where they're not supposed to park. Now, I don't mind paying village taxes. So I would prefer if maybe 1 day a week rotated, whether it's a Monday, Tuesday the next week, Wednesday the next week, and so on, that the police go out at a certain time, about 10 o'clock, and then when it hits 12, 2 hours later, that they could find out what's going on, because
So
that's
in-
why we have a problem.
So in the 40s and 50s, they tried an experiment. They installed parking meters. People were not happy. They took them out. They put up 2-hour parking signs. People were not happy and they took them out. We're dealing with 2022 and the current law. We all agree that the parking situation in the village is disastrous and needs to be resolved. Hopefully the comp plan committee will fix it or come up with some kind of a solution around this. We have to deal with the laws where they are today. And the law, in order to have these tables, if the tables were allowed, would require 2 parking in lieu of 3 tables and paid for the tables. And we have a letter from, my opinion, we have a letter from the zoning enforcement officer saying that the barricades and this plan is acceptable to him. And we need an opinion. We need to go forward. We believe it. We spent an hour 2 weeks ago. We're back to the same thing. We need to make a decision. I don't know, how does the board feel? Do we want to move forward and approve this tonight, or do you have another plan? You can't wait a year or 2 for this plan to come through for outdoor dining and parking that the comp plan committee is working on. We have a law that exists right now. Opinions from anybody?
Well, I'll give you my opinion. The Krog's proposal would add 14 chairs outside. So actually they need 2 more spots, but instead of providing 2 new spots, they want to take 1 away. So to me, that doesn't make sense. I mean, I love outdoor dining, and I'm not saying that I agree with the zoning code the way it is, but I think we have to follow the code.
Where are we, John? I haven't heard.
I think the code is, as Jeff says, I think was established to do something different than what's being asked for here. But the zoning enforcement officer has given us a letter saying that, as he sees it, this is a candidate for an in lieu fee. I tend to think that we're still going through a transition period in which restaurants need some help. And for 1 space, to accommodate a restaurant, I'm willing to do it if the zoning enforcement officer says it's compliant with the law. The only concern I have remaining is if indeed we're going to get the type of planters that are shown, that are illustrated from over at Gabby's. I think they're acceptable. They may not hold up for a long time, but they are sufficient to stop a bumper at, 4 miles an hour or whatever. The only thing that concerns me, if you can pan up a little bit on the screen, is the 10-foot dimension. The parking space is 8 feet now because of the width of the planters and everything. That's 10 feet. In order to diagonally get out of that parking space to the left, you need at least 15 feet. And that dimension isn't on here. I would want to make sure that where they're planting those planters still allows at least a 15 feet driving aisle so that the people who are diagonally parked there can get in and out of that comfortably without scraping those planters.
Excuse me, how many feet, John? Thank you for the swing.
My feeling is 15 feet is adequate for a 60-degree parking space.
I
Thank you.
believe it's 21 feet from the parking, edge of the parking lane to the left edge of that barrier. So if you look,
Okay,
it's either 21 or 23. So the car there, you see, I think the car is like 11 feet wide. So you've got like 5 feet on either side of it. It shows you what that size of the car is.
Yeah, we don't have any, I don't have anything to scale to be able to put a scale on it, but if, I would be willing to
There's the scale.
vote in favor of this if the condition is that there's maintains at least a 15-foot driving aisle and a backup space for those diagonal spaces. That's my feeling. I know, the in lieu fees were probably not designed to do this, but we are in extraordinary times. And if the zoning enforcement officer says that this meets the standard for in lieu payment and still has a majority of parking spaces available, I'm willing to do it.
Do we have enough people in favor of this to make a motion? I mean, I agree with John, as I stated before.
And I don't think it sets a precedent, because in terms of sidewalks, it's not a precedent at all. And the fact that it's only one space does not necessarily say that somebody can buy out every space they want. This is a space that has a lot of public parking around it. So that's my feeling.
Do we have another board member who feels, or I can just call for a vote and see what happens?
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that there needs to be a motion
All right,
drafted. I don't know if John is willing to do that based on he's the only one who's really provided a quote unquote condition of approval. So I think it would be in the best interest of the board that someone draft a motion with that condition.
John, will you make that motion?
You want me to make a motion?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I make a motion that the site plan as shown is approved with 2 conditions. That there maintains at least a 15-foot space between the rear of the adjacent parking spaces and the outside edge of the planters. At least 15, if it is 20 or 21, that's great. That makes sure that those planters aren't going to get hit. And the second condition is that the planters are consistent or similar in size, configuration, and quality to the ones shown as models.
Right.
And that, I guess that is it a $1,000 fee or parking lieu fee will be paid?
Yes.
$2,000.
Why is it 2,000 instead of one?
It's for 2 spaces.
No, it's just for one space.
But
No.
there's a number of seats outside is
It's
6.
the number of
Um,
seats that we're adding to,
Okay, it's by
the
number of
4
seats,
tables.
okay? Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. I'm sorry, $2,000.
Okay, so I will second the motion. We'll have a roll call vote. Michael Gee,
Aye.
Suzanne,
Nay.
Jeff,
Just to clarify what I'm going to say next, I just want 2 points. One is that I disagree with the zoning enforcement officer interpretation that this is an emergency and a hardship. And we're establishing the precedent that now anyone else can come to us and say, well, I want to buy back a parking space and pay the 2,000 and remove more spaces. So we are setting a precedent here. Let's make no mistake about that. Secondly, as Suzanne pointed out, there's already almost twice as many seats that we were approved as parking for in that establishment. My vote is nay.
John Clark,
Aye.
David Miller, aye. So the motion passes by a 3-2 vote.
Suzanne and Jeff, if you wouldn't mind drafting your reasons why you voted no, and please email them to me.
Okay.
Sure thing, right?
Thank you.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the ability for still people having a community in their mind, because unless you've been here as long as people should be here as long, they would realize that these businesses still need help. The pandemic is not over. A domino theory is occurring, and we're in trouble with the inflationary rates right now.
I don't think anybody doesn't have the community in mind, Joe. I think we all have the community in mind. And I don't think 43 years or 10 years or 1 year of experience makes the difference in what the code says and what we need to do to look out for the community and wait for the something more comprehensive.
I thank you, and I understand that, but the code, whenever I was a young man, I always learned when there was a rule, sometimes we have to change rules because there's different things occurring. So that would make us want to amend it.
We do that all the time when it's fair to everyone, instead of just making.
I'm quite familiar with
I
that.
think we can close the conversation now.
Gentlemen,
Thank you.
we have to move on.
Mhm.
I appreciate your comments on both sides. The fourth item on our agenda is the Terrapin Restaurant, 6426 Montgomery. Good evening, Warren.
Hello, planning board. Josh Croner is on the Zoom meeting this evening as well. So as we discussed at our last meeting, I'm sorry, you want to go ahead and say something?
No, we had a letter from the Board of Health, which says they don't have a problem with the additional seats. So it leaves us with two issues: the number of parking spaces and a major addition to a historic building in the village, the Baptist Church property. And it's not, a lot of times we approve things, somebody wants to put a deck in the backyard, a pool in the backyard, a bump out for a master suite or a kitchen, and you can't see it from the street. Unfortunately, this is a corner property, and you can see this structure from Livingston Street. So I have to hear the board's opinion on a major alteration to a property on the historic register. But the first problem we have is the parking.
Okay, so we have initiated conversation with the Church of the Messiah. They are receptive to a discussion, but I don't have any further information at this time, which I relayed to Ryan earlier today or yesterday. So I hope to have more information for a subsequent meeting, but I have no specific recommendations, agreements. However, it was suggested at the last meeting that the 2002 approval was for a specified number of parking spaces, recognizing the interior and exterior seating at the time that was included on the site plan. And I've asked Ryan to pass the question on to Ken McLaughlin, his position on whether we're starting from sort of scratch or if we're basing our additional parking requirement simply on that 2002 approval. Ken apparently has been in training and other seminars and so forth, and has not been available to either consider or respond to this, but this was raised at the last meeting. And so I would like to get some feedback from Ken, as well as further discussions with the Church of the Messiah before I can say anything more about parking.
Okay, we have several questions that I've posed to Justin, and Justin and I are proposing it to our attorney
Mhm.
about this kind of activity that businesses have been in existence for decades. The zoning law constantly changes, especially with regard to parking. There was a movement in the 90s for a $4,000 per spot parking in lieu of fee. Then that was a big fight about that. And then they suspended the parking in lieu of fees for several years until they figured out to come back with a 1,000. A lot of activities happened. Businesses were put into play, like Gigi's, like the movie theater, which is being grandfathered. If a grandfathered item is now being touched, does that change it to come under the current code? There's a
Sure.
lot of this parking is like quicksand. And it goes over a 20 or 30-year constant changing of the code on top of the fact about grandfathering business before the code. So we have a lot of things to talk about that. So we have some questions opposed to our attorney as well.
Yeah.
So I guess we can wait. I'd like the board to think about, look at the plans that Josh has proposed and see if that's acceptable as an addition to a historic building that's going to stay there. I mean, Kroger's going to take these barriers and tables away in the winter. This is going to stay there and be visible from the street because it's a corner property. So think about that. Get back to talking about this in 2 weeks. How you feel about a major addition to a historic building? Whether you have comments about what it should look like. You can't fit in with a 150-year-old Baptist church. So I don't know what this outdoor dining would look like, but think about that, because we have to approve a modification to a historic structure. This is. Yes, Josh.
Yeah, I would like to comment on that. I mean, I totally agree that it is a historic structure and it's a wonderful structure. But when you look at the development of this structure over the last 40 years since it's become a restaurant, and the condition of the parking lot specifically, and how that looks and how that interacts with the rest of the building. When I took over the building in 2003, that parking lot was a disaster. It was gravel and it looked horrible. I did some improvements to it. What we're talking about is making this parking lot much, much nicer. This is going to fit in well. I mean, I have Warren, who, obviously you guys all know Warren. It's because I want this to fit into the character of the village and go along with the character of the building. I want this to work well. I want this to be an aesthetic upgrade that goes along well with my historic building, as you point out, which is absolutely true. I mean, and I wouldn't even think of doing something that did not hold up to the character. But when you look at the parking lot itself, I mean, it really does need an improvement. I mean, compared to what that building is, this is going to be something that helps the overall look of the building. This is not going to be something that's in any way a detriment to the historic character of the building. I would never do that.
I think Warren, maybe you should take a second look at that building, because it did look to me like a very sort of temporary structure that is going to be up permanently. It doesn't have any material connection to the church, at least as I remember it. It doesn't have any cedar shakes on it, or, any architectural details that would link up or make it look like it was an accessory building to the church. And so maybe you should take a second look at that again, now that we're sort of, I know we have to resolve the parking issue first before we can really approve any structure, let alone the one that was being proposed. But if indeed we can solve the parking issue, which I think would be nice, in terms of cooperation with the adjacent asphalt that sits around vacant. Then secondly, I think you could work on the structure to make sure that there are some significant architectural pieces that look like the church, that use materials or overhangs or, whatever, even colors that would help make this look like it's sort of an accessory to the main structure, not a replica, but something that looks like more than a temporary shed out in the parking lot.
We can certainly look at that again. The thought was to treat it as a garden pavilion, but there's no reason why we can't incorporate more explicit references to the church. I think that's a nice idea, and we'd be happy to look at that tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm happy with that idea as well.
Yeah, I like the garden elements, and the landscaping are a plus. And the parking lot is atrocious right now, so I'm not opposed to doing something that would make the parking work better. And if indeed you consolidate it down to one entrance, you could also, I think, fit 4 more on-street parking spaces along that, because they moved the hydrant. The hydrant used to be up close to the parking lot, which made it impossible to park there. Now, when they redid Livingston Street, they moved the hydrant down to the corner. So now you could fit 2 spaces as it exists just by changing the sign. Or you could fit 4 spaces if you consolidated the driveway. So that's a plus. If you got a better looking parking lot and 4 more on-street parking spaces, that makes a difference.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Yes, that's what I wanted you guys to think about it and the planning board to think about it for next time as well. It's, parking, like I said, it's gone over 2 decades. I have pictures that I'm scanning out from 50 years ago, 1972. It was all a parking lot. There was no Montgomery Road 1. There was no Montgomery 1, 2. It was all cars piled up across the street and from on both sides of the Terrapin. There was plenty of parking. We built buildings on those lots since then. So parking is a problem, and we've talked about that ad infinitum tonight.
And if I could just add my voice to this, and it was John's recommendation last time, and I'm glad to hear that there might be some options with the church to do the parking, because that would be a great solution. But also I agree with David and John. I was going to bring this up myself. The look of that pavilion really kind of smacks you in the face. It's very visible because it's on a corner. It's not really behind the thing. So I also would appreciate you looking into kind of making that look like it could have been there, and not kind of a shed-like thing, as John points out. Appreciate if you can do that for the next time you come back to us.
All right, so I guess.
I got something to talk about. I was there last week, and the exhaust fan to the kitchen is extremely large and extremely loud. And I've never eaten in the back. I've been inside a number of times, but all of a sudden it's like, I can't imagine sitting next to basically a 747 engine when the kitchen's going. And it's not even visible on the plans, but standing there, it's like, it brings back a conversation of one of the immediate neighbors who said it's really loud sometimes. And I think we have to take that into consideration.
There it is. Mhm.
That the exhaust fan could be moved onto the roof, but the problem with that is I don't want to create any more noise that goes through the village. I mean, I know that Rachel Cavella has the one that you're talking about that's complaining about the noise that she hears. So if I stick more fans on the roof, she's going to be unhappy with that idea as well. And that
I can imagine eating next to that. That would be pretty close to you.
And Michael, it's interesting. I mean, I can see what you're saying, but we didn't have it. I mean, we had basically the same exact amount of tables for the last 2 years in a tent, and we didn't have one person complain. Nobody even noticed it. I never thought about that. So I'm not sure. Maybe there's definitely going to be a divide between that. I mean, there's not going to be like air coming from that fan. It's certainly going to be a barrier in between that. But I don't remember a single comment about that during the course of the year. Nobody brought that to my attention. I mean, obviously, it does make sense what you're saying, and I certainly don't want to put diners in a position where they're not going to be comfortable. That's actually the exact opposite of what I'm trying to do here. I mean, and really the need, you've obviously seen a lot of restaurants that are bringing these outdoor dining proposals. And the reason that we are is because there's a real demand for people that are not comfortable to eat inside. People will not, there are lots of my customers that I used to have that will only come in the summer now, will only come when they can eat outside. They will not go inside. And I don't know when, if that will ever change. So there's kind of a change in this overall, just the way that people eat. Some people do eat inside again, but there are people that will never go back inside. And many people want to have these options. So that's why a lot of restaurants are trying to find a way to accommodate their customers. It's not so much a business expansion as us finding a way for us to bring our customers into an area where they're comfortable eating. You know, and it worked so well for us for 2 years. And that's really what I'm trying to do. You know, as far as the parking situation in town goes, I mean, I can see you guys, I mean, just from listening to this meeting, you have an incredible concern for parking. I know that parking is probably in any sort of discussion of business expansion, a big issue for you. But at the same time, I mean, there's a lot of parking in town. I agree with Joe. It's not a parking problem, it's a walking problem. You know, you go down to Manhattan, and if you walk 2 blocks or 3 blocks, you scored a great spot. Here, there's never a time that anybody, no matter how packed town is, would have to walk more than 3 blocks to anywhere. There's always park spots available somewhere. And I mean, granted, we have laws and we have regulations, and you know, this in lieu of fee, which was set up by the trustees at some point, you know, accounted for the fact that businesses will not have enough spots or have to have, you know, some reason where they're not using or repurposing spots. So that provides some sort of relief for the village for the inconvenience of it. I mean, obviously, I'm trying to get extra spots through my neighbor, but if that's not possible, I mean, I certainly intend to try to use that in lieu of fee as well. And that's set up for a reason. I'm not going to be hurting the village. I'm going to be helping the village and the residents and the people that want to eat outside. You know, this pandemic has affected a lot of people. So we have to have a little bit more of a open mind and say, well, okay, a lot of businesses are now affected by this. The restaurants are affected by this. The restaurant patrons are affected by this. And how are we going to accommodate the changes that are necessary to make this viable for everybody? And, you know, obviously, we're not ready to make those decisions right now at this board meeting. I just wanted to mention this as a point moving forward that, you know, I work with the village. You know, I'm on village committees. I'm on the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm trying to be an active part in this community. And, you know, I see this as another positive thing for the community as a whole, for me to be able to do this. The suggestions that you propose to make the pavilion blend in better with the church, I'm totally in favor of that. I actually see what you're saying. And, you know, bringing up that point is a great point. And I think that as a planning board, that's great that you guys brought that up, because I'm going to work with Warren to figure that out, to make it look better, because I'm going to be spending over $200,000 on this thing. I want this thing to look so good, you know, that it's just going to enhance my building. I'm not just trying to make more money. I'm trying to make my building better. Anyway, that's.
I think it's important that Warren's asking that question. We postponed Gigi for the same reason. If something was done during one of these previous codes over the last 20, 25 years, and now the property owner wants to do something else, is the old part that was approved and under a different code frozen in time, which is what you're asking? And do you only have to add parking for Gigi's expansion or parking for Josh's expansion and just pay those parking in lieu of fees? Or do you say that when this thing was approved decades ago, the planning board approved it based on the code at the time and felt that these 21 spots were enough? And if you're adding X number of spots because of this pavilion in the back, should you only be addressing the addition? And that's a question that I've asked our attorney, about Gigi's, and you're asking Ken, it'll probably go to the attorney as well, about the Terrapin. Let's clarify, because we have businesses like that have been in existence for decades under various codes. And what does it mean when the rules change and you're caught, off guard? You only have to change the new part. Or if you touch something, does it open it up that you go all the way back in time, decades, and now have to relook at it under the current code? I'm not a lawyer.
Okay, I have another question. Documentation we got today says that Mr. Croner put in a new septic system 20 years ago. Do we have true 1,000 gallon septic systems that are there? Is that what?
So I did not put a new septic system in. I just repaired the existing system. And what had happened when it was run as Marco Polo's, there was very poor maintenance. So you have a series of dry walls in the parking lot, and they had one 1,000-gallon grease trap that came right out of the kitchen that would have collected the grease, and they didn't clean it regularly, and the grease
Right.
overflowed into a lot of the dry wells. So now when I came in, I ripped up the entire parking lot. I removed as much grease and contaminated material from the dry wells as I could. I installed a second grease trap 1,000-gallon in series with the original one, just to act as a backup. And I've of course maintained it so that I don't have any problems with the septic. And, when I did that initially, that was just to make sure that I wouldn't have problems in the future, which I haven't. Things have been pretty good. So
How often do you get your stuff pumped out?
at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, usually
Right.
in summer. I clean the grease and the septic. So I clean both grease traps. Usually we'll pull about 4,000 gallons every single time they come.
That comes back to when I first moved here 40 years ago. Foster's and the Beekman Arms had inadequate, and you could walk the streets and smell sewage, and they were having to be pumped out once a week. And at the time, state law did not allow villages to have a sewer system. The village got the state to amend its law, and that's why we have sewer here now. But at
I
least
wish it came all the way up to my restaurant, but
You're on
unfortunately,
the wrong side of the street.
yeah. And I looked into it 20 years ago when I came in here, and at that time it was $250,000 for me to tunnel under Route 9, go right down the alley behind Montgomery Road 2 and to Garden Street. Now it would probably be over $500,000 at least to do that. I mean, it's just completely prohibitive.
All right, so if nobody has any more questions, but think about, I think we got some good information. That's some good information for Josh and Warren.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ron.
I don't have a question per se, but I just wanted to share with the board that I've been receiving some correspondence from the public, sort of with this whole discussion and these different applicants, that to encourage the board that if they feel a public hearing is necessary, to allow a public hearing to be scheduled so the board can receive public input.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's something the board wants to consider for tonight. It is the board's discretion on an applicant by applicant basis. But if we take into consideration the location, it's a corner property, it borders both the Village Center Business District and the residential district on Livingston Street, as well as the Special Sensitivity Overlay District, that there may be a benefit to public input, or to at least allow the public to provide input to the board for this proposal.
Well, how does the board feel? We could schedule a public hearing for 2 weeks from now and do the public hearing and look at the new plans that Warren and Josh are going to work on, as well as a decision from legal about whether the rest of the building is grandfathered from 20 years ago, and we're only dealing with the additional seats, spots, parking in lieu of fee church spots, whatever, for the addition, not the entire building. We want to have a public hearing in 2 weeks as we discuss the site plan.
Do we have enough,
John, you're on mute. I can't hear you.
do we have enough information to schedule a public hearing, or do we need to wait till we have a better proposal, an answer on the parking and an updated proposal on the structure and the appearance of the building before we?
I would have
schedule?
hoped that can you do this in 2 weeks, get your answers from the lawyer and modify the look of it enough to make a presentation to the board and the public at a public hearing in 2 weeks, Warren?
Well, I don't know that I'm going to get any answers from the lawyer. You might, but we can certainly revisit the
You're going to
architect.
talk to Ken,
Right.
and he probably will call the lawyer.
Mhm. Right.
I think we should have a public hearing on an addition in a public place in the historic district. But I want to make sure that the applicant will be ready so that, it's, the public would have something to actually look on that looks like a final proposal. So it's.
So
up
it sounds like the consensus is it's a little too early to propose this. I just wanted to bring it up because I've been getting emails from residents who don't want to participate in these Zoom meetings that, they feel, these types of applications, there should be the opportunity for the public to provide input.
Well, I think what the consensus is we should have a public hearing. Will you feel comfortable enough to have a final enough concept in 2 weeks? Or we have to wait to the beginning of June?
I think we can have something. I can't speak to where we'll be in discussions with the Church of the Messiah because I don't know how available they'll be for discussions. And again, I don't know what answers we're going to get from either Ken or the village attorney, which something that you initiated. So we can
Maybe,
do what
Mr.
can
Chair,
on
we
our end.
shouldn't rush this. Let's not rush this. So.
Well, I'm willing to set a public hearing if Warren is ready to have an architectural design revision done so that we have a concept out there. The parking will be worked on. We can continue the public hearing if necessary.
Exactly, we could continue it if, exactly, we could
Mhm.
push it on to a
It's
following
probably
meeting.
better to me to get early public opinion rather than
Yes,
public comment rather than
You
late.
might get some public comments that would, you'd say, great, we'll incorporate that. So we can always continue it to June 1st. Let's schedule a public hearing for May 17th. We can leave it open if we don't have enough information. If we're still waiting, I will talk to Ken. I will tell him, we're having the same concept with Gigi's and other places to try to figure this thing out. It's restaurants and parking is the topic of the month. All right, so do we need a motion to schedule a public hearing?
I make a
Yes.
motion to schedule a public hearing for May 17th on this application.
I'll second that motion. Jeff?
Oh, roll call vote. Suzanne,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
David, aye. So we'll hopefully have enough information to start. I will talk with Justin and Ken and say we need some answers here quickly because Gigi is coming back in 2 weeks as well. And so we need answers rapidly from zoning enforcement officer and from our lawyer to clarify all of this, because they're asking the same question that you've asked. Okay,
Very good.
all right, so we'll see you in 2 weeks. Hopefully we'll have some good answers by then.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot for the time tonight.
Okay, so the next item is Frank Mazzarella, 17 North Parsonage Street. Frank told Ryan he is not ready. He wants to postpone for the 17th. So we'll move on to the next item, which is something we can do relatively easy and straightforward. It's 41 East Market Street, Sotheby's International Realty. They want to add some additional signage to the windows. We have timely signs.
I don't know, David. I thought I saw Timely Signs join. But it doesn't look to be the case. So maybe let's
We'll
just
hold it and see if they come back.
hold and see if they come back,
Okay,
and we'll move on to 41 Livingston Street.
41 Livingston Street. Proposed mudroom. It's 41 Livingston Street here.
Yes, he is. David Freeman. How are you?
Okay. So, Ryan, do you have the plan?
Yes, Chair, just give me a couple of,
Do you want me to do it, Ryan?
oh, if you have it all queued up, go right ahead.
Oh, sure. There we go.
So, to make that a little bit bigger,
All right.
see what you're,
So the great thing about owning an older home in Rhinebeck is you own an great older home. The bad part is you own a great older home. So right now, the side entry, the main entry that people use into the house is onto the small platform here where you immediately get to walk up one stair or down a stairs. So they would like to add a mudroom to the outside of the building, about 6 feet by a little under 15 feet. So I'm going to just kind of scroll up and walk you through it. The outside of it, so which is really the design portion, right? Left to right, the width of it is really centered on the dormer above the roof line. The materials mimic the dormer that's there existing, the fish scale pattern, the metal roof. The windows are actually being reused. So they're actually the existing historic windows that are there are being pushed out. The door is going to be matched. From a side perspective, we are going out, and that's really less determined on, what's a usable room. So the inside space right now that's going to be usable is 5 feet 6 inches, but there is a planting area and a retaining wall that holds back a tree that really is kind of determining how far out that goes. So this is just a picture of the existing. And so the intent is to, again, mimic that upper roof line, pushing it out 6 feet.
and which side of the building is this on?
So if we look at the site plan, it's actually on the north side of the, on the east side of the building. So it's just visible. There is a bump out that is a dining room bump out that's here, 22 feet 8 inches. So we're going out another 2 feet. So it's just visible from the street for that small portion that actually sticks out past the dining room.
Questions from the board? Everybody likes this?
I like it. It's pretty easy. It's simple. It's small. It ties in with the house. There's a lot of vegetation in the front. I don't even think you'll even see it at all. So I have no problems with it.
Anyone else? Suzanne, John, Craig?
Looks like they're doing a good job to me. Like he says, I think it's going to be relatively invisible from the street. It certainly won't be something that's prominent. And as long as they match the materials and the reused windows, I'm not sure we could ask for anything more than that.
Anyone else?
I agree.
I also agree.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the mudroom for 41 Livingston Street?
I'll make that motion.
Beat you.
Michael makes the motion. Do we have a second?
Donald, second.
John seconds. Jeff Christensen,
Aye.
Michael Gee,
Aye.
John Clark,
Aye.
Suzanne Holzberg,
Aye.
David Miller, aye. Good luck.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda, number 7, is 62 South Street.
Hello, everyone. I am the architect on the project. Peter could not be here.
So you want to alter a barn.
It is an existing garage. I can share the drawings here. So it is an existing garage in the backyard. Currently, the siding is in disrepair. So he would like to fix the siding, and in doing so, just wants to improve the interior as well.
Can you explain what's actually going on inside again?
Yeah, of course. Okay, so here are the plans. I apologize for the kids in the background if you can hear them. So on the right side of the structure will be a 1-car garage. On the other side will be a home gym. On the upstairs is just entirely storage.
So the uses won't change. It's just sort of shufflings around right now. The garage door is in the middle and it's going to move to the right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the uses don't change. There's no occupation or bathrooms being proposed or anything.
No.
So you're talking about new siding. You know, when I look at it from the street, it doesn't look like the siding is in terrible shape. But you know, I'm looking at it from a long way. Does it have to be replaced?
Yeah, there are many boards that are rotting. And he just wants to freshen up the interior, add some sheetrock, and in doing that just needs to fix the siding on the exterior. Oh, he's also proposing asphalt shingles. Currently there is a metal roof, and he just wants to replace that with the asphalt.
Now, the garage is sitting in the setback, but we're not touching the footprint of the garage, so I assume that that's okay.
And the use is the same. So, you know, I think,
We want,
I don't think it requires a variance myself, but you know,
No.
I don't have the final ruling on something like that.
So
we-
John and Chair, the square footage was checked by the zoning officer. So if you look in the residential district section, garages under a certain square footage do not require a variance as long as they're 5 feet within the setback.
Okay. And this is under 530 square feet.
Yes, I believe it's 428 square feet. Amanda?
Let me confirm. So total, yeah, roughly, it's actually 600 square feet total, but that's
Oh.
including that second story storage.
No,
Okay, so no, you don't count,
just the footprint.
just what's the building foot?
Oh, I'm sorry. Uh,
Well, the attic storage is 215. That should be the same size.
I was right there when he did the calculation. What
yeah,
what is it by?
it's 24 feet by 18, which is 432.
There you go.
And we like that people do everything they can to preserve barns / garages in the historic district and not knock them down. So this is a good thing.
Now that the
Right, this is the
plans, as I
existing
remember 'em-
front.
Yeah, the plans as I remember them show siding to be determined.
It will be wood siding, and it's going to be painted the exact same color that is there. It will match what's existing.
All right.
That's that house on South Street, that's like a gray house. That's next to the house to the right of it from the street is red and white.
Your guess is as good as mine, Jeff, being that
Okay, I'm
you-
looking at
you live-
Google, I'm looking at Google Maps here and the street sign, stream. Okay,
Someone says the home is yellow. Just have a comment from the public.
okay, that's not the one I'm looking at.
So explain the window changes.
He is going to attempt to keep as many of the openings as possible, and attempt to keep as many of the actual windows as possible. Where that's not possible, he will replace in kind, keeping with the nature of the existing.
So wood single hung windows.
Yeah,
I think as long as the siding is comparable to what's already there, I don't have a problem with it. It seems to me the rest of it is they're matching existing materials and existing configurations, so that it's just making sure that a garage lasts longer than what's there now.
Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, thank you, Ann Butler. I see that is a yellow house, and you can't even see the existing garage from the street as I look at it on Google Maps.
Oh, it's way back.
Yeah, so I like the plan.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the site plan for 62 South Street?
I'll make a motion to approve it with the condition that the siding is compatible with the existing.
We have a second.
Second, Jeff.
Okay, roll call vote. Suzanne,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
David Miller, aye. Good luck.
thank you very much for your time.
Okay. The next one is a discussion. That's the glades, yeah. 56 Livingston Street, discussion to renovate an addition, a pool, and a pool house.
Good evening. My name is Seth Stickle. I work with Mark Graminsky, PELS PC. Here tonight to represent Alan Dakotas and Elizabeth Mazzarella, owners and applicants of 56 Livingston Street in the Village. Just going to go ahead and share my screen if that's okay. So this parcel is a 0.235 acre parcel on the south side of Livingston Street. Just zoom into the existing conditions. It is located in the residential zoning district and also located in the historic overlay district. Typical of this area in the Village, this residence is located close to the frontage of Livingston Street. It is a 2.5-story building with stairs that lead up to a covered porch. The covered porch is along the northern portion of the building and also wraps around to the eastern side of the building. The driveway is a paved driveway to accommodate approximately 3 vehicles, and that's located here on the northeast corner of the property. The house was built in the 1900s. It is a 3-bedroom with 2 full bathrooms. The total gross floor area is 1,746 square feet. The only other structure located on the property is 8x10 shed, which is located at the rear south portion of the property. The existing residence, one item to note, existing residence is currently 5.9 feet from the western property boundary at its northwest corner. The rear portion of the yard is fenced with a mix of both chain link and stockade fence, as well as some hedges, some planters, and some hedgerows. We have identified the existing septic tank located underneath a deck in the rear of the property, as well as the existing seepage pit. The house is served by public water supply from the village water supply, as well as overhead utilities. Al and Liz are downsizing from the Chestnut Street house, and they're going to make this their permanent residence. They would like to make some improvements. The proposed improvements, I'm just going to go over to our proposed conditions, are located at the rear of the property. These improvements include the addition of a pool, which is 30 by 14 in-ground pool, one-bedroom pool house that's approximately 570 square feet, so it's considered an accessory dwelling unit. We are proposing to install a new sanitary disposal system to current standards that will accommodate the 3-bedroom residence and the additional 1-bedroom from the pool house. The western boundary, there is a bit of a rise in the land as it goes to the west with the neighboring property. We're proposing a retaining wall to accommodate the pool house, as well as the installation of the septic system and the pool. In the future, it is proposed to make an addition to the existing residence. That addition to the rear of the existing residence would be approximately 500 square feet and is 2 stories, so a total of 1,000 square feet. Also proposed would be new landscaping. As you can imagine, to install this, we will be disturbing the site a little. So there will be new landscaping proposed and complete hardwood fence surrounding the perimeter of the rear of the lot. That is the current proposal. We are here for discussion because we would like to just talk briefly about a few items. First of all, the health department. One of the first things that we needed to do when Alan was approached us about this development was to look into what's existing on the site, and then obviously work with the Dutchess County Health Department for accommodating the proposed addition. So we've had the health department on site to conduct deep tests, as well as review this conceptual plan and the waivers that would be required to accommodate this plan. And they have approved the concept for this, and we will be pursuing health department approval. One item that we would like to discuss with you is regarding the potential for what would be an area variance for side yard setbacks. As I had mentioned, the existing building line along the western boundary is 5.9 feet at its closest point to the western boundary. The new buildings, both the pool house, and the area for the future addition are proposing to maintain that 5.9 feet. So we wanted to discuss whether it would be necessary at this time to look for a positive recommendation or a recommendation from this board so that we might be able to approach the Zoning Board of Appeals, or whether it's even necessary, as we don't intend to increase the existing nonconformance. So that's a discussion item I would love some input in from the board. Lastly, we're looking at this as a phased development, and there's two reasons for that. First reason being, we would like some more time to adequately and intelligently allow Liz and Al to work with the architect who is here this evening with us, Matt Dakotas, to develop the plans for that building. Second is that while the interior renovations to the existing residence are occurring, we would like to accommodate Liz and Al to remain on the site. So they would like to live in the constructed pool house while improvements are being done to the existing residence. So we're looking at this phase so that the details we would provide now are for the pool house, and any other landscaping or site improvements. And future, we would come back to the board for approval of the second phase, which would be the addition to the building. A variance and be seen by the zoning board of appeals, we would want to go ahead and address now the area variance that's required for the proposed addition to the existing residence. So
But
just
first of all,
Yeah.
we haven't submitted a site plan yet, so we can't make any recommendations to the zoning board of appeals. And if you're only dealing with the pool and the pool house now, we don't want to deal with it. I don't know if we want to deal with a possible variance for a possible unknown addition to the house. So I guess my first question is, what is the pool house? If they can live in there, does that mean this is going to be a permanent accessory apartment?
No, we have plans for the pool house. I'm just going to go ahead and go to that sheet. We have provided the architect, the layout for both the pool house, and the bluestone pad. So this is the interior of the pool house. The pool house is actually fairly modest. There is no dividing walls or anything of that nature. It is an open floor plan with a bathroom. And this would essentially be a pull-out couch. So it's a place for them to enjoy the recreational aspect of the pool and more for use in the temporary for a place to stay. So it is not a permanent residence, something that they would look to rent or something like that, if that's what you're.
So I have a question. I'm not sure about the code. Maybe John or Ryan know. It's clear that a garage can be 5 feet from the property line. What about a pool and a pool house? They require a variance. That's what I'm not sure of. But again, we're not doing anything tonight except asking questions. I guess we could pose that to the zoning enforcement officer. Because the house is not going to be built yet, the extension, I mean, but the pool and the pool house you want to go ahead with. So we would need a clarification from the zoning enforcement officer. He needs to look at this, Ryan, and make a determination if a variance is needed for the pool and the pool house, or if they're allowed in the 5 feet like a garage is.
Seth? The pool house is 18 feet, 11 inches and 3/4.
Yes, in its width. Yep.
Okay, so
Yeah.
just to keep some simple math here, we're gonna round up to 19 here. So
It's approximately
and then
19 by 30.
19 by 31.
19
is
by
that-
30.
Okay, so 19 by 30. That's
570.
570. So they
Yep.
are well over the 5-foot allowance in the residential district.
Too big.
Too big.
And the pool, I'm not sure if you need a variance from a pool, but they need a variance for the building at least.
Or they have to move it back 10 feet to 10 feet.
Or slide it over.
Yeah, they have to have a 10-foot setback from the side yard, which they can accommodate by changing the proportions of the building if that's what they chose.
So actually driving most of this is the sanitary disposal system
Yeah.
and separation requirements from various elements of the sanitary disposal system. So coming from the pool house, we need to run an effluent line to a septic tank, which collects all of the existing flow from the residents. Then that needs to go into a pump chamber, and a 2-inch force main would run and feed the D box and the primary system in the rear of the yard. So we're accommodating as best as possible the sanitary disposal system requirements for setbacks, so that we can achieve the waivers that we have worked with the health department on obtaining.
Beth, have you guys done any lot coverage calculation with this? Are you okay? It's
Yes,
a narrow
yes,
lot, but it's a deep lot.
Yes, our table on this plan provides coverage. Maximum allowed in this zone is 30%. The existing site roof structures cover 11%, and the proposed site plan would be approximately 18.7%.
Okay.
We are within the area coverage.
Does that count the pool?
I was just about to say that, John.
The pool is considered yes,
It did cover the pool.
yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's a big yard. So, I think you're going to have to abide by the 10-foot side yard setback on the pool house or ask for a variance. And I'm not sure you would have great grounds for a variance because it's a self-created sort of thing, but that's not up to us. And the same question should be asked about the pool, about the setback for the pool. I'm not sure that that's covered by the 5-foot exception either.
So Ryan, we need to show this to the zoning enforcement officer, ask about the house, definitely, because it's over 500 square feet, and the pool, whether that falls into the setback as well. But they need a variance no matter what, unless they want to slide this over 5 feet.
Or make it different proportions.
Right, or make it, longer but you have to have it's got to be a certain distance from the septic
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
And a certain distance from the pool, so you're locked into some kind of calculation, but Mark and Seth know that better than we do.
Seth, so I hate asking this as the clerk. What's the dimensions of the bluestone patio?
I would have to go ahead and measure those. If you just give us a moment, we can certainly do that for you.
I can speak to that if you want, Seth.
Yes, please, Matt.
So right now we have it at about approximately 31 feet by roughly 46 feet. But that patio is, we're happy to kind of negotiate that. That's there as kind of the owner's hopes and dreams. But if you have some comments or feedback on that, we're happy to kind of change it however you advise.
So
Not being a board, go ahead, Chair.
Can you slide back to that diagram of square footage? Can you slide that over a little bit so you can see what's in there? So you have that's square feet yard. So we really have to see what the square footage is for the pool house, the bluestone patio, and come up with the see if that's under the 30.
So Chair, the bluestone patio is a landscape feature. That's not considered under lot coverage. My comment, and it's hard for me as the clerk to comment this, but if it could be readdressed, because when I did that calculation, Matt, that's 1,426 square feet of bluestone.
Which includes
you might want to relook at that as needing that much bluestone.
Because of coverage, is that the question? Because you might be
Not because of coverage, John, but because if the bluestone patio wasn't as big, they could readjust the pool to bring it out of the setback.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Actually,
we
what's
can't
driving
do. Oh,
the
sorry. Go
pool-
ahead, Seth.
Yeah, what's driving the pool location is the septic tank and pump chamber are required to be a minimum of 20 feet from the pool.
So even if you cut back half of those squares, Seth, of bluestone patio there, you'd be encroaching that 20-foot distance?
No, we can accommodate, I believe, shifting the pool by 3 feet. The proposed pool setback, as it's shown here, is 7 feet from the western boundary line, and I believe we would have that 3 feet from the 20 feet from both the pool and the septic tank. What we were just, in laying this out, we were just considering what would be the existing building line and trying to hold that all the way through to the back rear of the property.
It would be best if you could avoid having to have a variance and just go with the planning board, but it's entirely up to you. If it's 3 feet, it seems like you could do something to avoid going to the zoning board of appeals. As John said, it's a self-caused issue. It says so a pool house, 5 feet. Property line.
Swimming pools are considered structures under the code, and so therefore would have to be 10 feet from the side yard lot.
As
line.
with the house. So you can, if you want to have this, it's entirely up to you. You'd have to come back with an official site plan next time if you're ready. And once we have an official site plan, we can make these comments again with the lot coverage calculation and everything. And then we would have to make a recommendation to the zoning board of appeals for their June, they would meet in June, the 3rd week in June, to hear this case. So you could think about it.
Another calculation I think we would need to see, since this is an accessory dwelling unit, is that the floor area could not exceed 25% of the primary residence, the primary house, the building, the house that's on there. So we would need to show on your plan the square foot of floor area in the existing house, so that we see that it doesn't exceed 25% of that amount. Also, that as an accessory dwelling unit, it would require 1 dedicated off-street parking space, and we would need to see, I guess your driveway's long enough. But
I don't think he's doing an application for an accessory dwelling units.
well, it is. There's a kitchen, there's a bathroom, there's a
And
place.
it's over 500 square
This
feet.
is an accessory dwelling unit. And I think-
Only if he's using it as an accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah.
A guest house is allowed. I think. If he's not renting it out, then I don't think it's an accessory dwelling unit.
Well, an accessory dwelling unit has to be owner occupied. It's not, you don't have to be, section.
Main house has
Section
to be owner
92.237, accessory dwelling units, C3, owner occupancy is required, or a special permit has been granted for a single family, minimum floor area for
But
accessory.
he's not
dwelling units.
proposing renting it out, Jeff.
I don't see that matters if it's an accessory dwelling unit, does it?
It has a bathroom and a kitchen.
Yeah, it's,
I don't know. This has to be run for an opinion by Justin or Ken.
yeah, it says the owner must reside in at least one of the 2 dwelling units, but I agree, you have to run it by Justin, but just,
I'm also hearing that a 500 square feet is a threshold, that if it's under 500 square feet, there may be some ability to be within 5 feet of the property line.
Yes.
No,
And
no,
No,
not actually.
400, what?
If it's a garage, it's allowed to not be up to 530 square feet. But if it's a playhouse, greenhouse, tool shed, garden shed, or other similar structure, it can only be 144 square feet and meet the 5-foot threshold. So the fact that it's not a garage, you have to go, it doesn't come close to meeting 144 square feet. So I think it's got to make the 10-foot side yard setback, or you have to have a variance. In terms of the accessory dwelling unit, it's an interesting question. I think unless it's not a dwelling unit if it's not occupied on a permanent basis. I think people can make a pool house with a kitchen and a bathroom as long as they don't rent it out. But, if you have some questions, I think that would be a question for the building inspector or the zoning enforcement officer.
Yes. And so what you have to think about before you come back in 2 weeks with an official site plan request is that 3 feet that important that you would have to get a positive or negative recommendation from us, and then go present a public hearing in front of the zoning board of appeals to see if you can get those 3 feet. Or come back with a site plan that we could look at and move towards approval on our own without going to the variance, but that's entirely up to you.
The other thing I would raise is that I think that gray block to the right of the pool house is a dwelling, somebody's house. The neighbor's house is set way back. Correct?
It is, yep,
And that's right on the property line, right?
it is.
So I think, you can certainly build your pool house and your swimming pool on the back of your property, but I would want to make sure that there's privacy maintained for the neighboring property. So you should think about that, whether it's, I think you said you're going to put in a 6-foot fence, but there may be other, measures that you might want to consider. I don't know whether it's landscaping or whatever.
There's an existing forsythia hedgerow as well as some arborvitaes in that area. It would be something similar to that for screening, I believe. Yep, yeah, and certainly we would consider that.
All right, well, show it on the plans if there's existing or proposed landscaping in that area, it'd be nice to know.
Because if you look at parcel access, the adjacent property is really odd in that it's way back from the street.
Yeah.
Actually, right adjacent to the pool house.
And they don't have their proper setback, so, that doesn't preclude putting a pool house or a pool back here. I just want to, have the neighbors' proximity thought about in the site plan in terms of possible screening or noise attenuation.
So Seth, looking back through my notes from your presentation moments ago, you had mentioned that the owners plan to stay in the pool house when the main house is being worked on, correct?
That is the intention, yes.
So by that intent, John, would it be considered an accessory dwelling unit?
I don't think so myself, because
Yeah.
there's not two families living on the property, there's one living on the property, and sometimes they'll be living in the pool house while the first house is not occupied. And then when the first house is occupied, then they'll move out of it and use this as a, recreational use primarily. And, maybe a guest could stay there, a family member or something, but it's not a permanent dwelling the way it would be necessary for me to call it an accessory dwelling unit. Because an accessory dwelling unit is called a dwelling unit, and to be a dwelling unit, it has to be somebody who actually lives there. And the pool house is not something that somebody will be living there other than temporarily while the house is unoccupied. So that would be my interpretation, but I'm not the final say on such things.
We allowed this last year on Platt Avenue, where they were renovating the house and wanted to get back in time for the school year. And they fixed the garage. They're going to have a garage with a playroom in it, with a kitchen and a bathroom. And we allowed them to live in the garage playhouse room while the main house was being constructed. So we've done that in the past.
Yeah, and even when the construction is done, this is pretty much the same concept as that 3-car garage where they're tearing down the old garage barn structure out on Market Street, the one that we had the floodplain discussion about. And it was the same thing. It clearly people could live there, but we approved it on the condition that it was not an accessory dwelling unit. You might stay overnight on the weekends, et cetera, but people wouldn't live there permanently, either rent or free.
So Seth, the section of code that they're referring to is chapter 120-28 or 29,
28.
letter C, and all those, subsections that go along with that, just to review as we, lead up to May 17th.
We have a building like this and other buildings that we've approved. If you had a sofa bed in there and family members came for Thanksgiving or Christmas or something, they could certainly use this as an auxiliary bedroom. It's not being rented to strangers. So you guys have a lot to think about while you draw up the site plan proposal to send to us, and think about those 3 feet. It's going to be a lot of time and effort. And you have to get a positive recommendation from us. And then the zoning board has to do what they do. Sometimes they like what we say, sometimes they disregard what we say and say no when we say yes and vice versa. So you'll be spending a month or two working on this, trying to get the site plan approved. And then if the ZBA did approve it, you'll be coming back in July for site plan approval. So think about that. How important is that 3 feet? I don't want to address the main building. That's something that when you get back to that site plan approval for the second phase, we'll talk about. You can think again, how important is that couple of feet? But think about what you want to come now, and that's just the pool and the pool house. And we can see you in 2 weeks.
Hi, David, it's Mark Rominski. Just a point of clarification. So the 3 feet applies to both the pool and the pool house. In other words, both the pool and the pool house need to be offset from that westerly boundary by needs a 10-foot offset. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's how I interpret the law, yeah.
We
Okay.
can run this by the zoning enforcement officer and get their opinion, but
Okay.
that's sort of our opinion.
Great. All right, thank you.
Okay. So let's think about, you can certainly make an appointment to see Justin or Ken and show this to them and get some questions answered. But think about it, okay?
We do have some additional details of the buildings themselves. Just wanted to at least show those to you now, so that if you did have any comments on those, we could possibly address those as well. So it's an elevation, shown from the east side. And here is the elevation shown from the west side. So we'll stay on the east side because it's just a bit more comprehensive of a picture of how they interact. In looking at the pool house itself, there are, certain elements of the pool house that, just wanted to maybe see if you guys have reactions to or information you could provide us so that we could detail those. So Matt, maybe you could just quickly discuss what the pool house makeup might be.
Sure. So Alan Liz requested that the pool house be kind of just a simple form with a shed roof, where the shed kind of opens up to the north face, so they can get a lot of like dispersed north light into the overall kind of living kitchen area. And we try to keep the height of the roof as low as possible while still keeping kind of functional space within the kitchen area. So that's kind of where the form came from. In terms of materiality, they're looking at wood and just like a plaster or stucco, but obviously that's something that we'd love to discuss with you all and hear your feedback about. But yeah, the idea was to keep this as simple as possible and just kind of as low as we possibly could so that it wasn't as visible from the street. And in addition, we'll obviously have fencing and plantings around it too once we present the final proposal.
It's a very modern looking structure, but it's way back behind the main building. I don't even know if you can see it from the street, but I don't know. How does the board feel about it?
I don't think it complies with the design standards in Article 8, Historic District Overlay. Any new construction or alteration of existing structures shall be compatible with the contributing historic property itself and surrounding historic properties in terms of height, setback, roof shapes, cornice features, proportions for facades, window openings, porch detail, materials. It has a list of recommended facade materials that should be met, and it does have a individual window proportion shall be greater in height than width. Although the board may make exceptions for transom and other specialty windows. But to me, even if it's not shown highly visible from the street, it has to meet the historic district standards, and I don't see how this does.
So can we talk about I guess my first question for you is if I update, I'm assuming the reaction is to the form. If if I'm kind of understanding you correctly. And I just want to make this clear because Al and Liz were pretty adamant about the way that the form kind of engaged the site. So I guess my first question for y'all is if I can massage the window proportions and materiality to match what your guidelines say in the historic district, do you think that the form is something that we can maintain?
I personally think you could incorporate a shed roof. There are historic outbuildings with shed roofs. But the window patterns and wall patterns, I think, are something that no historic building in the district would emulate, or could be reflective of any historic building in the neighborhood. That's my opinion. I would prefer a gable roof because the main house has a gable roof, but I think you could do a shed roof, but it would have to have a more traditional window and wall pattern for my blood.
Yeah, I mean, this looks like the co-work space out on Route 9 with the transoms above it and stuff. It needs to look, the code says it needs to look more like the house, even though, as I said, it's way back and you can't see it, but it is there and it should comply with the code.
Yeah, I agree. And you may or may not see it from the street, but these are very tight, small, long lots, and all the neighbors are going to see this. And even, again, historic district code, as John points out, wouldn't allow, frankly, this kind of looks like a California beach house here. Even if you went for an accessory dwelling unit, again, the point is made that it has to maintain an appearance compatible with the architectural features of the principal dwelling unit. So I think we need some work on this.
And as we just said, that the neighbor to the right is going to be looking right at this out their
Yes.
windows.
And from behind, I believe.
It would look like the main building. I don't think that I can sort of get the consensus. The board does not like this as I do not. You have to come up with something more traditional. Rhinebeck doesn't look like this. And this
At
is a
least
house
not
on
in the
the
historic
right.
district. There are places where you can build this. I have one built right behind my house that was built this, but in the historic district, you have to comply with or we all have to comply with the code design standards, and they're not onerous. They're relatively simple, but I don't think this makes it.
Understood. Well, I'll talk to Al and Liz and get their feedback and present a scheme that they're happy with.
All right, so you have a lot to think about over the next 2 weeks.
Yes, sir.
We do appreciate all of this feedback. It's very important, and especially late at night here. So thank you so much for taking the time. And it's very helpful.
Yeah, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Oh, of
Yes,
course.
this is Al Dakota, so I want to thank you for your time.
Okay. See
Thanks
you
for
in 2
coming
weeks
to us
with
with this.
something.
Very helpful.
Good. So.
I'm glad you came in. It's better to have a discussion beforehand than,
Absolutely.
yeah, to have a
That's what
site
they
plan
came.
that has to be fully massaged.
Yeah, that's how we like to proceed. So, if there are any other comments, we'll obviously be communicating with Ryan. And if any of those come through him, we'll certainly listen and come back to you in a few weeks with a proposed site plan.
Okay.
Yeah. And so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you guys want to take a look in the next 2 weeks, you could go to Google Earth or Parcel Access and look down at the property so you can all see how that the building next to it is kind of odd that it's so far back out of way beyond the 25-foot setback, and it will be looking right at the pool house.
It is
Yeah,
a one-story building. Just important to note that the neighbor to that on that side is one story. So I don't believe it has windows. There is one window on that facade of the building. There's actually only one window.
If I'm looking at the street view correctly, I believe the garage is on that side.
And it may be just the garage window. So
We'll make a note of that. We'd like to see a neighborhood map or something from Parcel Access or Google Earth so you could see the adjacent houses on the side and the front and the back. And zoom out a little bit and have some images. Is that okay?
Yes, certainly.
Yes, sir. Thank you again.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
So we have some minutes.
Is timely signs coming yet? Did they come back in or not?
Oh,
We had Sotheby's to sign. They were here and then they never.
they never came. They're not here. So we'll have to hold them over to the, it's gonna be a long meeting on the 17th as well.
We're not responsible if they can't keep track of the dates or anything like that. So,
We had the minutes of October 5th. I think Suzanne and Jeff made some corrections. Everyone happy with the minutes of October 5th now?
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine to me.
So I have a motion to approve the minutes of October 5th.
I'll make the motion to approve those minutes.
All right, I'll second the motion. All those in favor, we can just raise our hand and say aye.
Ah,
Aye.
Now, did people get a chance to look at November 2nd?
Yes.
I did not. I've been away in Utah for 8 days and I just got back last night. So
I just had one correction, which I emailed, just about the spelling of Port Cochere. It's a little tricky.
Are we happy with Suzanne's comments, or you guys want
well, I'd have to abstain because I haven't looked at them yet.
we want to hold them over till May 17th, or we want to go with Susan's?
If everybody else is happy with them, I'm happy with them. But I'm actually with Jeff. I just got back into town this afternoon at 3 o'clock, so I had to rush just to even look at the site plans, not the minutes. But I trust you
Oh,
guys.
well,
I'll vote with you if everybody else is happy.
I didn't get a chance to look at them either. I mean,
All right, we'll wait on those.
All right, so we'll wait on for the next meeting.
okay.
Comments from anybody else?
I noticed the other day, 63 South Street is being renovated like big time, inside and out. And I don't know what they're doing. Cornicini Construction's there. They had building permits in the window, but you know, that's historic district and
Only if it's the exterior, Mike.
Ryan said
Which
that,
one?
I asked Ryan about Michael's question, and he said they got approval to dig up the old oil tank and to put in a new boiler. And
they're doing a lot more than that. This is
We're gonna have to send a letter, Mike.
I came by, I ran by it first thing this morning, and it looks like there's new windows, 2 over 1. An odd window.
I think we got to get it when anybody's doing anything in the historic district, they at least have to let us know, you know, rather than us discovering after.
Well, they got a building permit, but it's a building in the historic register. I don't know if they get a fence permit or something, but if they're touching the house, I don't know. Brian, can we send the planning police over there?
I don't think we can do that, Mr. Chair. We can certainly submit a letter to them and find out what's
Okay.
going on.
Is that the one where they're putting in the new driveway?
Yeah.
No,
No, that's the different one?
But-
63 is further down towards East End and the mobile station.
Can I share my
The-
screen, Ryan?
Go ahead.
They,
Yeah. Do I have permission? Okay, here we go. Let's see if this is it. Do you see this?
they putting in they put in a gravel driveway with
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, they put in a gravel driveway with granite stones,
right.
and I haven't seen anything other than that.
It looks like they're doing all kinds of stuff on the inside.
Well, the inside, again, we don't have any control over that. If they're putting in new windows, unless they're replacement in kind.
This
then,
is 63,
Yeah, that's
Oh my
60.
gosh.
which is 60.
Jeff's all over the place.
Yeah,
It's the
they-
little white one there.
Yeah, I wanted to
white
see,
one?
I thought they were doing something on the right side of the house, but
They are. They're all over the place. Back, front, inside.
unless I had, my glasses were fogged up, when I ran by that this morning, it had 2/1 windows,
2/1.
2/1.
You mean new windows? They replaced the windows?
They look new to me.
Well, then they should have come for a planning board.
What do those windows look like now? They're 2/2.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
The windows are 2/1. I'd never seen a window like that. Yeah, those are 2/2. They were 2/1.
Yeah, well, they shouldn't have gotten a permit to replace the windows.
Front yard and the backyard are all torn up. I don't know.
The only building permits that were issued to 63 South Street was for a tank removal and an oil boiler replacement.
No, they're doing all kinds of stuff.
Thank you, Mike. We will we will get it to the necessary
I mean, it looks nice.
personnel.
I don't have a problem with what I saw.
I don't know what else to tell you, Mike.
Well, on your next
You know, I don't
note,
know what
Michael,
else
look
to
at the
tell you,
window.
you know.
Look at the
Um,
windows and see what you see. I mean,
you
I was-
know, I can't go to a crow's nest with binoculars and be looking at everybody.
Okay, I make a motion that Ryan gets a drone.
That's right.
So he can go up on the roof of Village Hall, and fly over the village and be our roving reporter.
Well, it's good that we've got Michael cruising the neighborhood and seeing these things
I
because
think we need like a Channel 4 news copter or a Channel 5 news copter, you know, circling Rhinebeck, you know.
well, if they let me just interject here. If they actually did start doing more things, then I think we have a process issue here. Because anytime a building permit is issued in the historic district, there should be a sheet of paper with 36-point type that says you may not change anything on the exterior of your building without planning.
So
board.
wait a minute. Whoa, Jeff, wait a minute. So each building permit application is a case-by-case basis.
Right.
When we're considering the facts of replacing or removing a tank, a buried oil tank,
Yep.
and also when we're considering an oil boiler removal and replacement, that cannot lead to one's thinking on our side in the department that these folks are planning anything more. It is the responsibility of this new homeowner, and they are a new homeowner to the village, that if they have projects, they should check with the village before starting those projects.
Yeah,
It
I'm
is
su-
obvious in this case that they've chose not to check with the village, specifically this department, on what the protocol and process is.
Okay.
So
I'm just suggesting, Ryan, let's learn a lesson. This is not the first time this happens. This happens all the time where you get somebody new moves into Rhinebeck. They don't even know they're in the historic district. They don't, well, the town I came from in Connecticut, I could do anything I wanted. So I'm just saying, let's learn from this. Let's, take a learning moment. And if
But-
they're coming for a permit
Okay.
for anything, just give them a sheet of paper, says, oh, by the way, if you didn't know, you're in the historic district. You cannot change anything on the outside. We're happy to approve this, but just be aware. It's educational, it's no cost, and I think we should learn a lesson. Instead of keep going through this
Jeff,
every
last
single
year-
time and saying it's their responsibility. And
Last
then
year,
we hear about it
55
when it's
South
too
Street-
late.
55 South Street was bought, and all of a sudden, 8 central air conditioners appeared on the front
That's
of a
right.
historic building. 8.
This happens
One
all
free
the
room.
time.
I've never heard of
Right.
such craziness.
Yeah, we
But it's
have to
there
take a little
now.
more, we have to take a little more responsibility to educate newcomers. We can't just say it's their responsibility and then it's too late. Let's use our heads.
All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
are we ready to adjourn the meeting?
I have one other point.
Hold
I have
on,
one-
John's got something.
I got something too. It's always bugged me and the that place out on Route 9 on the north end doesn't have any street trees along the frontage. And I can't imagine that we adopted that site plan without street trees along the frontage. They never put them in. I'd like somebody to check the approved site plan to see if the trees were not put in that were supposed to be put in. And
When
the
I
same-
When
and
I
the-
checked it, when we were going over the tax shop, I checked the minutes for and the only discussion about the frontage was when and if the sidewalk gets installed. I do not recall seeing anything about landscaping details, but John, I will recheck that.
Just check the,
For you.
the site plan itself, because they may have provided street trees and we wouldn't have commented on them in minutes. And the same could be said for the strip mall just to the left. They took a couple street trees out, I think, and never replaced them, or let them die and then never replaced them. And I just think that whole area, which is getting better, and each time we do a site plan out there, it looks a little better, but we're falling down on the street tree elements, because it seems to me that there's a big gap there between the strip mall, the pizza place, and the laundromat, and the old diner where street trees are not being provided.
The,
I just
tree
want to make sure
commission-
that what we approved is being maintained.
Does the tree commission plant trees in the business district or just the residential?
That's a question for Meg
Yeah.
Crawford.
I'm
I think
trying
they
to see
can
if
plant them anywhere. They planted them in front of the bank, I remember.
Yes, they did. They planted in front of M&T Bank. He just wanted skinny trees that didn't go too high, wouldn't be butchered by
Yeah.
Cecil Hudson. Yes.
I
Yes,
think
so
they can plant them anywhere.
we can
Just,
ask Meg if she could look at that strip from the diner down to the UPS mall, if they could look at those trees.
Oh, first we should look at the site plans to make sure that the owners are not obliged to do it.
No, yeah, right. And if not, then we could ask Meg if they could plan for what will be next fall. Put some trees along. there.
John, do you remember when Bill Clark was in front of the village to redevelop that? What would it have been for Mid Hudson Valley Credit Union when they moved in there?
Yeah, I would imagine that's what it would have
Okay.
triggered. Yeah, because that was the only change I think that's been made. They made some occupational changes, tenant changes, but when they put in the bank, I think we asked for parking lot improvements and frontage improvements. I would look then. I understand he doesn't want to block his sign, but it seems like there's a big gap there along that stretch where there should be street trees.
There's a lot of sight lines that have to be taken into consideration coming out of the UPS mall,
Yeah.
coming out of the other places, but I'm sure properly sited, you could plant a few more trees along there. It is the gateway to the village. And if they're not required to do it, perhaps we can ask the tree commission. They just planted like 25 trees along Market Street. If they could schedule some trees in that area for next fall.
Yeah.
one other point. Thanks for bringing up John, because that reminds me of a question I had. We approved next door at Unlimited Tomorrow a fairly comprehensive redoing of that property. Is the responsibility that we approved the property owner or the tenant?
Property owner.
Fine, because we ended up giving them a year to do this, and if it was the tenant, they might have just pushed it back a year on the assumption they're gonna move out by then anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, great,
No, I think it runs with the owner.
good.
Yeah.
And the tenants only represent the owner when they're coming before us.
And they're gonna plant some trees and landscaping to hide that giant gravel parking lot, which is gonna look nice when it's done too.
Yeah, and I remember bragging about how had done that. They had taken their parking lot out in front. But then when I looked at it, there was no trees there. And I can't imagine we didn't approve trees along that frontage.
So if we could do some research about what was ask from the owners and not. And then if we don't have it, then we can go to Meg and ask her if she can schedule some trees to make that strip look a little nicer, because it is the gateway to the village. And the fairgrounds took down some trees, that planted all nice trees along that fence, all the way to the north entrance. So that's gonna look nice. Those trees get bigger. You want to have trees right near the Tree City sign at the
Yeah.
village border. That would be nice. Okay, anything else? All right, everybody stay safe. I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
That
John,
was fast. Raise your hand. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Aye.
8 minutes. Hopefully we get some more from Miranda, and I'll see you for a very long meeting on May 17th.